After I found out my wife was cheating, I started dating again, but she stalked us and attempted to kill us. It all started with a feeling. At first, it wasn't anything specific, just a nagging thought in the back of my mind. I couldn't put my finger on it, but something was off. My wife, the woman I had been married to for years, seemed distant. Little things started to add up. She'd come home late more often, acting a little too casual about where she'd been. Sometimes, her phone would be glued to her hand, and if I ever tried to glance at it, she'd quickly close it or put it out of my reach. That wasn't like her. She used to be open, but now everything was secretive. I'm not the type of person to jump to conclusions without evidence, but over time, I couldn't ignore it anymore. The vibes just felt wrong. And then, there was this one day that would change everything. It was a Saturday, something I'll never forget. I was going through our living room, just doing some cleaning, when I found her phone on the couch, face up. She wasn't in the house at the time. I figured maybe this was my chance to see what was going on. I'm not proud of it, but I started going through her messages. As soon as I unlocked her phone, I could feel my heart rate pick up. The first thing I saw was a text from a number I didn't recognize. It said, "I can't wait to see you tonight. I miss you." My stomach dropped. I thought, maybe I'm overthinking this. Maybe it's someone from work or something harmless. But as I scrolled, the texts became more and more intimate. "Can't wait to hold you again. Last night was amazing. You're the only one for me." That's when I knew. I had no more doubts. My worst fear was true. My wife was cheating on me. I felt sick. My whole world felt like it was crumbling in that moment. I couldn't breathe. It was like I was trapped in this horrible nightmare, but it was real. I couldn't even look at her phone anymore. I had to put it down. My hands were shaking. My mind was racing. I thought, how could this happen? How could the woman I trusted more than anything betray me like this? The anger started to build up, but so did the confusion. How long had this been going on? How could she do this to me? To us? I couldn't even wrap my head around it. My mind was a blur of questions, emotions, and disbelief. But one thing was clear. I had to confront her. I had to hear it from her. I wasn't going to let this slide without understanding what had happened. When she finally came home, the air between us felt heavy. I couldn't even look at her at first. I was angry, hurt, devastated, all at once. I just blurted it out. "I know about the affair. I saw the messages." Her face went pale, and she didn't even try to deny it. I could see the guilt written all over her. She just stood there for a second, staring at me like she didn't know what to say. It was almost like she had prepared for this moment, but no words could make it better. She tried to explain herself, of course. The usual excuses. It didn't mean anything. It was just a mistake. I was unhappy, and I didn't know how to talk to you about it. But none of that mattered to me. At that point, I didn't care about the reasons. The trust was broken. She had chosen to be with someone else, and that was something I couldn't forgive. I could feel my emotions building up to a boiling point. The hurt turned into anger, and the anger turned into an overwhelming wave of disbelief. My whole life felt like a lie. I asked her, "How long? How long has this been going on?" She looked away, unable to answer me directly, and that just confirmed everything I needed to know. It wasn't a one-time mistake. This was an ongoing betrayal. I remember the silence that followed. Neither of us knew what to say. I didn't even know what I was supposed to feel anymore. The woman I thought I knew was gone, replaced by someone who had deceived me in the worst possible way. At that moment, I made a decision. I couldn't stay in this marriage anymore. I couldn't live with the constant doubt, the fear of what else she might be hiding. The trust was shattered beyond repair. I told her, "I'm done. This relationship is over." She tried to argue, to beg, to apologize, but I knew I couldn't go back after this. That's when the reality hit me. Everything had changed. I had to let her go, even though my heart was heavy with pain. There was no going back from this. No matter how much she begged. The fallout was intense. The emotions were raw. But I had made up my mind. I had to move on. After everything that happened with my wife, I felt completely lost. It wasn't just the pain of finding out about the affair, it was the feeling of being betrayed by someone I loved and trusted with everything. It was like my whole world had been turned upside down. For weeks after the breakup, I felt empty. I was lonely, angry, and honestly, I didn't know how to move on. There were moments when I just sat in my apartment, staring at the walls, wondering if I'd ever be able to feel normal again. There was this heavy weight on my chest. I had to come to terms with what happened, but it wasn't easy. I spent nights thinking about what I could have done differently, but at the end of the day, I knew that none of this was my fault. It was her choice to cheat. And while that didn't erase the hurt, I started to realize that I deserved better. But healing isn't quick, it's messy, and it takes time. At first, I wasn't sure if I could even think about dating again. The thought of putting myself out there, trusting someone new, felt impossible. But I also knew that staying in this constant state of sadness wasn't going to help me heal. I needed to find happiness again, even if it meant opening myself up to the possibility of getting hurt. I had to give myself a chance to move forward, to rebuild my life. It was a decision that was tough, but I knew it was the only way to get my confidence back. So, after a lot of time spent thinking and soul-searching, I decided to dip my toes back into the dating world. It wasn't easy, though. I was still dealing with a lot of baggage from my past relationship. I wasn't fully healed, but I also knew that I couldn't let one betrayal define the rest of my life. I signed up for a dating app, mostly out of curiosity. I wasn't expecting much, just wanted to see what it felt like to talk to someone new. And it wasn't long before I met someone. Her name was Sarah. We started talking online, and right from the start, there was something easy about it. No games, no pretending to be someone we weren't. It was just real, simple conversation. We had so many things in common. Similar interests, a similar sense of humor, and we just clicked in a way I hadn't felt in so long. When we met in person for the first time, I was nervous, but it felt like we had known each other for years. I was surprised at how natural it felt. There was no pressure, no expectations, just two people enjoying each other's company. We went for coffee, walked around the park, and just talked. It wasn't like my old relationship where I was always second-guessing everything. With Sarah, things felt genuine. It felt good to laugh again, to talk about life, and not have to worry about anyone hiding things from me. It was a huge contrast to how things had been with my ex-wife. With her, everything had become so toxic and deceitful. But with Sarah, everything felt fresh and new. I realized I hadn't felt truly happy in such a long time. It was the first time in a while that I was excited to see someone and actually felt like they cared about me. It wasn't just the joy of meeting someone new, it was the way she made me feel about myself again. With Sarah, I felt valued, respected, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was worth something. And honestly, that feeling helped me rebuild my confidence. I started to remember who I was before everything fell apart. I was no longer the guy who had been cheated on, the guy who had been left in the dust. I was me again. Someone worthy of love. Someone with a future. Dating again wasn't easy, and it didn't erase the pain of the past, but it was a step forward. And with every conversation, every laugh, and every moment I spent with Sarah, I started to feel like I could move on. This new relationship wasn't just about finding someone to be with, it was about finding myself again. And that was the most important thing of all. At first, things with Sarah felt amazing. I was finally starting to feel like I was moving on from the nightmare that had been my marriage. But then, slowly at first, things started to get unsettling. I began noticing little things that made me feel uneasy, like the way my ex-wife's behavior started to shift. It wasn't obvious at first, but there was this nagging feeling that something wasn't right. One of the first signs was when I started receiving random texts from unknown numbers. At first, I thought it was just a mistake, maybe someone else with a similar area code or number. But after a while, the messages started becoming more personal. It wasn't anything too direct, but I could tell it was her, even though she never signed her name. Little things like asking if I was doing okay, or questioning how things were going with Sarah. The fact that she even knew about Sarah felt off. I hadn't told her anything about my new relationship, so how did she know? And then, it got worse. I remember the first time I saw her out in public after everything had ended. I had taken Sarah to a cafe we both loved, just for a quiet morning together. We were sitting outside, enjoying the sun, when I noticed someone staring at us from across the street. I didn't think much of it at first, but then I saw the same face, my ex-wife. She was standing in the shadows, just watching us, like she was waiting for something. My heart sank. I tried to brush it off, but something in me told me that this wasn't a coincidence. It couldn't be. After that, it started happening more frequently. I'd go out to a store, or even just walk down the street with Sarah, and there she'd be, lurking in the background. She'd appear out of nowhere, sometimes pretending to be passing by or acting like she was just out for a walk. It was like she was everywhere I went. If we went to a restaurant, she'd turn up, sitting at a table across the room. If we were at a park, she'd show up on the same trail, walking behind us, never really close, but always close enough to make me feel uncomfortable. I began to dread going out, knowing that at any moment she could be there, watching. It wasn't just about seeing her in person anymore. The phone calls and messages kept coming too. She started to get bolder, calling me late at night, sometimes leaving long voicemails, asking why I was moving on so quickly. She would try to guilt-trip me, reminding me of the good times we had and telling me how much I had hurt her by dating someone new. At first, I tried ignoring her, but every time I blocked one number, another would pop up. She would change her number, pretending to be someone else. It was exhausting. And then came the manipulation. She tried reaching out to Sarah, pretending to be concerned about me, asking her how I was doing. She'd ask if I was okay, or if she could help me with anything. I could tell Sarah was getting frustrated and worried too. It was clear that my ex was trying to worm her way back into my life, into our lives, whether I wanted it or not. But the worst part was the way it started affecting me emotionally. I began to feel paranoid, like I couldn't go anywhere without looking over my shoulder. I'd check the rearview mirror in my car every time I drove, making sure no one was following me. The emotional toll was overwhelming. I'd wake up with a pit in my stomach, dreading what the day might bring. Would she show up at my job? Was she hiding behind the corner at the store? Would I have to deal with another late-night message? It wasn't just the fear of what she might do. It was the constant anxiety of knowing that she was watching, controlling everything in my life, even from a distance. I couldn't escape her. Every time I tried to move forward, every time I thought I was finally free, she found a way to drag me back into the chaos. And as much as I hated it, a part of me started wondering, was she going to stop? Or was this just the beginning? It was supposed to be just another normal day. I remember waking up that morning, planning to spend the day with Sarah, maybe get some breakfast, and just enjoy the time together. But I should have known that things were far from normal. The tension had been building for weeks, and I could feel the storm coming, even if I didn't know exactly when it would hit. The last few days had been particularly intense. My ex-wife's behavior had been off the charts. She'd been showing up in places we frequented more than usual. I'd received another voicemail from her just a day before, pleading with me to come back, telling me how much she loved me, and how she couldn't let go. It was crazy. She seemed completely unhinged, and no matter how many times I blocked her, she'd find a way to get through. I'd had enough. I was beyond frustrated, but I tried to brush it off. I tried to stay calm, knowing I couldn't let her get to me. That morning, Sarah and I decided to go for a drive to clear our heads. It was one of those beautiful sunny days, perfect for a long road trip through the countryside. We were both looking forward to just getting away for a few hours, even if it was just a small break from the mess my ex had been causing. We were about halfway through the drive when it happened. We were on a quiet, winding road when I noticed a car following us. At first, I didn't think much of it, but as the car got closer, I recognized the license plate. My heart sank. I turned to Sarah, trying to stay calm, but I could tell she saw the panic in my eyes. I didn't have to say anything for her to know what was happening. Then, out of nowhere, my ex-wife's car slammed into the back of ours. The impact wasn't huge, but it was enough to jolt us forward. My first instinct was to pull over, thinking maybe it was just an accident, but the moment I did, my ex drove up beside us, her car screeching to a halt. She threw open the door, getting out faster than I could process. I was frozen in shock. I've never seen her like this before. She was frantic, her face red with anger, her hands shaking. She started yelling at us, calling me all sorts of names, blaming me for everything that had happened between us. It was like she wasn't even the person I used to know. This was someone else, someone completely unhinged. At that moment, I knew I was in danger. Sarah grabbed my arm, pulling me back toward the car, trying to get us both away from her. But my ex wasn't done. She started walking toward us, her hands raised like she was ready to fight. I could see the crazed look in her eyes, and I realized in that moment that this wasn't just about arguing anymore. She wasn't here to talk. Suddenly, she reached into her car and pulled something out. My heart stopped when I saw what it was, a tire iron. She was holding it in her hand, gripping it tightly like it was a weapon. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Was she really going to attack us? My mind was racing. I yelled at Sarah to get in the car, trying to shield her, but my ex was already charging toward us. Everything happened so fast. As she swung the tire iron in my direction, I managed to duck just in time. The iron hit the side of the car with a loud bang, and I knew then that things were about to get much worse. I could see Sarah terrified, her face pale with fear, but she was already trying to start the car, desperate to get away. I grabbed her arm and shouted for her to go, but my ex wasn't done. She was screaming at us, shaking the car door, trying to pull it open. For a moment, it felt like time had stopped. like I was trapped in some nightmare. But the reality hit me all at once. We had to get out of there, and we had to do it fast. Thankfully, Sarah managed to speed off, and I kept looking behind us, half expecting my ex to be chasing us down the road. But she didn't. She had stopped, standing there, waving her arms, yelling, but she didn't follow. We kept driving, not knowing if she would show up again, but knowing we had just narrowly avoided something far worse. The moment we found a safe place to pull over, I could feel my hands shaking. The adrenaline from the whole thing was still running through me. My mind couldn't process what had just happened. I was in shock. I kept thinking, how did it come to this? After we calmed down, I knew I had to do something. We had to call the police, and fast. I couldn't let her get away with this. I filed a police report, but the damage had already been done. The fear I felt that day never really went away. The emotional toll was heavy, and I wasn't sure how to rebuild my sense of security. As for her, the legal consequences didn't come immediately, but the investigation into what happened took time. I had to press charges for the assault with a weapon, and she was eventually arrested. But that didn't take away the trauma. It didn't take away the feeling of fear that had crept into my life. That day changed everything. It wasn't just about my ex anymore. It was about my safety, my future, and the reality that some people can become so consumed by jealousy and rage that they'd stop at nothing to destroy what you've built. And I never looked at her the same way again. The events I went through completely changed me, my outlook on life, on people, and on trust. It's hard to believe that the man I was before all this, the one who trusted people easily, who thought love could overcome anything, is now someone who's had to rebuild his entire perspective on life. The most important lesson I learned through everything, through the betrayal, the pain, and the constant fear, was that trust is fragile. Once it's broken, it's incredibly hard to fix. I learned the hard way that some people, no matter how much you love them, can turn on you. And when that happens, it can shake you to your core. Trust is a gift, not a given, and it's something that should be earned and maintained. But more than just that, I learned how strong I really am. At the time, I didn't feel strong. I was crushed, devastated, and terrified. But when I look back now, I realize that I made it through something that could have destroyed me. I didn't let it break me, even when I was tempted to give in to the fear and the anger. That strength wasn't something I knew I had until I was pushed to my limit. Moving on after such a deep betrayal wasn't easy. But what I've learned is that you can't let someone's actions define your future. When my ex turned into a person I couldn't even recognize, I had a choice. I could let her destroy me, or I could take my life back and build something better. And I chose to move forward. The hardest part was learning to trust again, both in myself and in others. But I did it. I took small steps to rebuild my life after everything fell apart. I sought therapy to process the trauma, and slowly but surely I started to feel like myself again. I worked on my confidence and started putting myself first. I learned to trust my instincts. When something feels wrong, when my gut tells me to walk away, I listen. It's been an ongoing journey, but I'm proud of how far I've come. As for my safety, I've taken all the necessary precautions to make sure I'm never put in a position like that again. I've learned to set firm boundaries and not let anyone, no matter who they are, cross them. And above all, I've realized that my life is worth protecting. I learned that lesson the hardest way possible, but now I know the value of peace, trust, and personal security. So, yeah, I've been through a lot, and I may still have scars from it all, but I don't let those scars define me. Instead, they remind me of my strength and my ability to rise above any challenge that life throws my way. Life goes on, and so do I. As I look back on everything, I realize how much I've changed. Sometimes we go through things that break us down. Things that shake us to our core and make us question everything we thought we knew about life, love, and trust. But it's in those moments, the ones that feel like they might destroy us, that we discover just how strong we really are. We find out what we're capable of handling, how much pain we can endure, and how important it is to keep moving forward, no matter how hard it gets. What I learned through all of this is that we are in control of our own peace. Life will throw obstacles at you, people will hurt you, and sometimes the ones you trust the most will betray you. But you can't let them take away your happiness, your self-worth, or your peace of mind. You have to stand up for yourself. You have to protect what matters, your mental health, your safety, your future, and you can't let toxic people or past experiences control your life. Life is too short to let negativity take over. So, if you're out there facing something similar, or even if you're struggling with your own battles, just remember, you are stronger than you know. You are capable of getting through whatever comes your way. It might be hard, it might take time, but you will get through it. And when you do, you'll realize that no matter how much life tries to break you, it can't stop you from rising again. So keep pushing forward and never let anyone dim your light. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever been through a betrayal like this? How did you handle it? What lessons did you learn from your experience? Share your stories with me in the comments below. I want to hear from you. If you enjoyed this video and want to hear more stories like this, make sure to like and subscribe. And don't forget to click the bell so you never miss a new video. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate all of you.